That's right. It's time for With the First Pick, the CBS Sports NFL Draft Podcast. This is episode 7. I'm CBS Sports draft analyst Ryan Wilson. And in addition to our general manager, Rick Spielman, who has more than 30 years of NFL experience, including a decade as the Vikings GM, I'm joined by CBS Sports draft analyst Josh Edwards. There he is, also known as Joel, and Chris Trapasso. They're responsible for all the draft content you read on CBSSports.com. And as we expand the show in the coming weeks, you'll see a lot more of them, both Josh and Joel. All right, today, before we get going, we're doing something a little different. It's the With the First Pick mock draft show version 1.0. We'll be doing millions of these things, no doubt, throughout the draft process. So look for those things. So that's it. We're going to take turns as general manager, make picks, and you can tell us, if we made your team better or worse. And you can tell us on YouTube, where you can watch the show every Monday at 2 p.m. live on the Pick 6 YouTube channel, or you can get the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and search With the First Pick. By the way, if you have a draft question for us or a suggestion for Rick's Picks, one of our favorite segments, drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and let us know, and we'll answer them on an upcoming mailbag episode. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at NFL Draft CBS, where you can follow us for updates and show clips. All right, let's get going. Got Joel, Josh, Chris, Rick, and me. And Rick, because you're the only one here with any actual GM experience, you're on the clock. And before we get going through this thing, let me say quickly, this draft order will be set between 1 and 18, and then 19 to 31-ish. Could change based on the playoffs, because obviously the playoffs are still ongoing, and there is no 32nd pick because the old Dolphins there got in trouble. So, Rick, with the first pick, you are taking, as the Bears, by the way, and there are no trades in this thing, because you would definitely trade that, I would imagine. Who are you taking?
Well, I guess that was the first rule of this first mock, is that there's no trades, right? We're just going straight through down like there's no trades, which is actually unrealistic, but we'll go through with the unrealistic mock draft here in early January. So before we get the rest of the answers, but so if Chicago, which we're for all intensive purposes doing this mock with no trades, I had a choice between Will Anderson, the linebacker pass rusher from Alabama, and Jalen Carter, the 3 technique from Georgia. And I went with Carter. And the reason I went with Carter, they need players all over the place. But they need definitely on the defensive side of the ball. And to me, when you look at the depth of this draft, I think there are some very good pass rushers. And I think we're going to see some good pass rushers down at the Senior Bowl that may not be here in the first round, but there's a lot of depth. So in the hardest position to fill and find has been that dominant, as you want to call, under tackle or 3 technique. So with the first pick, no pun intended on our podcast here, I ended up going with Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle from Georgia.
Right. And Debo notes, we will have trades in Mock Draft 2.0, the live show. So look for that so we can let Rick flex his muscles. Let me ask you, Rick, and we'll get out of here, or we'll move on to the next pick. But let me ask you this. In terms of layups, quote unquote, and by that I mean like Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Aiden Hutchinson, where does Jalen Carter fit? Is he that sort of player, or do you have some concerns and you might be leaning towards Will Anderson?
Okay, I would say this, that Jalen Carter could be as good as he wants to be and the most dominant defensive player in this draft class. Some of the questions are going to come up. Does he play hard every snap? And some of that you see on tape. I'm sure that'll be addressed through the interview process as everybody goes through this to get those answers. But when he's on and he's playing, there's no one that can block him at the collegiate level, and he's going to be tough to handle. And he's a type of player that I believe that teams will have to game plan around so he doesn't wreck games at this level, as long as he plays at I would say 100% maximum effort when he's in there. And sometimes on the tape, you didn't see that all the time, but when he goes, he's, to me, the best defensive player in this draft.
Traps, let me ask you and Josh quickly, and then we'll get this thing rolling here. Have you guys typically, because you do a mock draft every week, typically been leaning on Jalen, Will Anderson, or have you been working up the old trade machine to get a quarterback up there? Traps.
So I just did my first trade because, like you said, I've done so many mock drafts where, like Rick was saying, that I wanted to see something a little more realistic, where the Bears locked into that first pick. So I did do a trade in my most recent mock draft. I've kind of bounced back and forth because I think Jalen Carter and Will Anderson are both legitimate blue chip prospects at very important positions. And like Rick said, positions of need for the Bears after they traded Robert Quinn. And they just don't have a lot of depth on the interior. So I don't know if I've leaned more Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. It's really been about 50-50 because I think they're that good and they have the upside to be all pros in the NFL.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I've kind of taken a similar approach because we do have 3 months left before this draft. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything, mix it up one week to the next. The one scenario that I kind of like the most is the idea of trading back a little bit, not too far to where you can still get one of those top defensive players. And obviously that's going to depend on the trade offers that are available to Chicago at number 1 overall. But I think that's an ideal situation because I do have some concerns once you get past the top 5-6 players in this draft class as to whether or not it's worth moving back that far to miss on one of these caliber defensive players.
Yeah, and Rick sort of touched on it. The edge rush class is deeper than the interior defensive line class, and that's also a concern if you are high on Jalen Carter over Will Anderson. Pick number 2, I'm on the clock. I took Bryce Young, and that's been sort of a recurring thing for me. I think Traps, is he your QB1? Josh, is he your QB1?
Yeah, he's my QB1, and I understand the concerns about his size. I mean, it's unprecedented to have a quarterback of that size, that stature in the NFL, but the game is a little bit different. I mean, you can have a point guard at the quarterback position distributing the football, really utilizing the targets that you're able to build on that side of the ball. So I have less of a problem with his size today than maybe a decade ago. But I understand that it's not going to be, it's not going to be one size fits all where he's going to be a fit for every team. Some may prefer CJ Stroud. Some may prefer Will Levis. I totally understand it, but Bryce Young, with what he brings to the table, as far as the intangibles, his impromptu playmaking ability, the leadership, all of that stuff, he's my top quarterback prospect.
Sounds like you've been listening to Rick on that one there. So, all right, pick number 3. Traps, you're on the clock. The Cardinals. You taking a quarterback?
Yeah,
What'd you think about that?
I think if the situation with Kyler Murray was not kind of restrictive from a financial standpoint, because they're probably going to be rebuilding with a new head coach, maybe DeAndre Hopkins being traded, I would think about it. But because Kyler Murray is kind of locked in, I'm going with Will Anderson, the edge rusher from Alabama. With J.J. Watt retiring, it's a clear-cut need. And even though they picked Cam Thomas last season and Najee Sanders at kind of that outside linebacker or rush linebacker position that have some flexibility on the inside as well, they still need a premier pass rusher in this defense. They've needed it for a while. They got, good production from J.J. Watt late in his career, but Will Anderson has looked like a future top 5 pick really since he stepped foot at Alabama. He can beat blockers in a variety of ways: bull rush, outside speed rush, inside move. He is really a high upside player who also has a high floor.
All right, Josh, you're on the clock. You are the Indianapolis Colts. I want you to tell us who you pick. And then, Rick, I want you to grade that pick in terms of how you feel about this player.
This feels very dangerous, but I have the Indianapolis Colts taking Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky, with the 4th overall selection. And I'll preface it by saying this.
He's already nervous.
He lost.
Go ahead, get that preference in. We always need a preference.
He lost 3 starting offensive linemen from last year's class, changed offensive coordinators, lost the 2nd-round wide receiver pick. He was incredibly battered throughout the season. I don't think the public is aware of just how injured he was over the course of the year. They turned him into a strictly pocket passing quarterback, and I think this is a guy that, really thrives off initiating contact, taking that first hit. I think he builds on that once he gets that first hit under his belt. But throughout the course of the season, look, I understand he did not have the season that we had expected of him. And it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all, like I said, for Bryce Young either. But this is a guy that has great size. He's got elite arm strength. He's got good mobility. I think if he's put into the proper situation, say Indianapolis, for example, where he's got an improved offensive line, Bernard Ryman, the left tackle, was showing a lot of improvements over the course of the year. You've got Braden Smith, you've got Quentin Nelson. I mean, you've got pieces, Ryan Kelly. So if you put him behind a quality offensive line, you make the right coaching hires, I'm just saying. I mean, this could be. Let's go
You
trade
sound
for
like-
DeAndre Hopkins.
You sound like you're, Josh. You sound like you're defending yourself, and your life is.
Yeah, I didn't even say anything yet, except
All right, Rick, what do you got?
It was preemptive the way that it was given to me, so I had to defend myself a little bit.
No, I mean, I'm not going to argue now. It's too early in the process, but
We got time.
Everybody's right now. We'll see.
But you do like Levis, though, right, Rick?
Yeah, I do. I do think he has a lot of maybe the most talented arm. I don't agree with a strength of him taking hits because you can see what happens. I mean, you see Josh Allen, and that was some of the comparisons. And, Josh Allen got banged up a little bit. These guys that are running quarterbacks, you've seen Justin Fields that lost a lot of time this year because he gets banged up. So I don't know if that's a positive. His athletic skills, reminded me that just watching the game last night, another big quarterback, Daniel Jones, who people don't give enough credit for how he moves. I think Will Levis has that type of movement and maybe is a little underrated on his movement skills and his arm strength. And I understand there wasn't as much talent around him this year, but some of the decisions that he makes on the field, even last year when I thought I was, maybe going to be QB1 watching 2021 tape and then seeing some of the decision making that he made this year still puts that into question. And I'm sure that'll be drilled down into these interviews when these teams get in front of him and why he made this throw or that throw. But he has all the natural ability to be a very good starting quarterback in this league. But I may have leaned, and I don't mean to be a Mr. Prickles here in this mock draft. The way CJ Stroud played that last game and the way he showed that he can use his legs, which was the biggest question, and we'll get to him in a minute. I may have leaned towards CJ in this one.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And again, we'll have millions of mock drafts to rectify any concerns that we have as we come to a consensus. Rick, you're on the clock with the Seahawks at 5. And my only preemptive question is, why did you choose this player as opposed to another player who's going to go right after him?
So you were mad that I took Tyree Wilson because you're going to get ready to take Myles Murphy next?
No, I'm happy with the way it unfolded, but I'm wondering why you took Tyree over Myles Murphy.
I just think he's bigger. He has so much more upside. I think when we get down there at the Senior Bowl and he goes down there, and I think he's going to really show up. He is a unique athlete for how tall he is, and his bend in pass rush and his ability to burst to the quarterback is pretty unique. And I just think this kid just has a higher ceiling right now than Myles Murphy. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to end up being the best pass rusher out of this draft before it's all said and done.
Okay, that's the answer I was looking for. So with the Seahawks, Rick
takes thank you for approving. We can go on to your pick now.
So, Rick, you made the first of 2 selections for the Seahawks, thanks to the Broncos, of course. So you hit a home run with the guy's name, at least, Wilson. I mean, you can't go wrong there. Number 6, I'm on the clock with the Lions. I'm taking Myles Murphy, who we talked about, and we'll talk more about him later so we can get this thing going, not to get stuck too much here on guys who don't play the most important position, of course, quarterback, which brings us to pick number 7. Derek Carr, who knows where he'll be playing next year. He won't be in Las Vegas by all accounts. Traps, you were on the clock. Bryce Young and Will Levis are gone. What are you doing?
So I had to take advantage of Josh's huge homerism of being a Kentucky guy and loving Will Levis. I saw CJ Stroud there. Like you mentioned, Derek Carr is not going to be with the Raiders. So I'm picking CJ Stroud. This was kind of a home run pick for me, I think. Like Rick said, the end of the season for CJ Stroud didn't play that well, really at all against Michigan, but really rebounded against the eventual national title winning team in Georgia. With that certainly did not have as many future NFL players as it did last year, but still had Jalen Carter and company. Good pieces in the secondary. I think the improvisation isn't really there with CJ Stroud, but the pocket passing, the decision making, accuracy to all levels could really be accentuated with Josh McDaniels with the Raiders.
So, Josh, I'll ask you, why did you choose Will Levis over CJ Stroud? Are there any major concerns? And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see CJ made his announcement, which I don't think was a surprise. There were some rumblings that he might come back, which would seem far-fetched, but he's going pro. So what made you choose Will Levis over CJ, and what are your concerns, if any, with CJ?
Well, I think the issue with CJ is it's a one-game sample size as to the improv skills that he showed in the playoffs there. He's shown everything else on tape. There's a lot to like about the guy. I'm not trying to set this up as I love Will Levis a lot more than I love CJ Stroud. I like both of them. But when I look at what Indianapolis has done at the quarterback position, under Chris Ballard, you've got Phillip Rivers, you've got Matt Ryan, you've got Carson Wentz. Who fits more of that mold than Will Levis? I mean, he's going to blow teams away at the interviews. I mean, he's an incredibly intelligent kid. Did a internship on Wall
Those guys
Street,
weren't very good. So if you're comparing Will Levis to him, I'm sorry, you got choked up on that one.
This is earlier in their career, though, Rick. That's the difference here. But
Josh,
when you're picking these quarterbacks, you're trying to pick a franchise guy that's going to be there for the next 100 years.
Welcome to my world, Josh. How's that going for you?
But with all of that being said, if CJ Stroud is the pick there, I'm good with it. I'm just looking at what Indianapolis has done in the past, even though it has not worked out for them, and the type of quarterback that they may prefer, even though they're going to have a new coaching staff, which may rule all of this out. But that's why I've got three months to change my mind. So that's where we're at.
Right.
No, this is etched in. I mean, this is in stone, so no one can change their picks.
No going back.
You say that, but somebody is going to take notes of all of this and bring it back in 3 months. So
yeah, his name is Debo. All right, pick 8. Josh, you took Peter Skoronski. I let you talk about CJ so we could move on from Skoronski. I like him a lot, but we got time constraints here. So that brings us to pick 9. And Rick and I have talked about Anthony Richardson before, and he had me under the impression that he wasn't that high on him. And yet here we are, Rick, pick number 9. The Panthers need a quarterback. If they take Anthony Richardson here, let me ask you this. What's the plan for 2023 for Anthony Richardson in Carolina?
Well, I mean, they have to go get a franchise quarterback, and they have to go young. They can't keep going through the Darnolds, the Mayfields, the Phillip Rivers, and the other older vets, the Will Levises, guys that you were comparing them to. So, I think if everything else checks out through this pre-draft process, his study habits, his ability to want to be an NFL quarterback and what it takes to be an NFL quarterback, there's no question about the arm talent. There's no question about the athletic skill set. If you're honest with yourself, and I understand the inconsistencies and some of the wild throws and then some of the, what did I just see and why would he just do that type throws as well. But if you can get the answers to that, he has potentially the most upside out of any of these quarterbacks that are in the draft. And if you want to, I think he's a better, and the last time I think I read, or I may be wrong, is that they took a quarterback in the first round was Cam Newton when he came out. And I think this guy is just as good of athlete as Cam, but I think he's a more natural thrower than Cam Newton was coming out. So that's kind of why I went with this pick. And the owner is not going to come out of this draft without a quarterback.
Yeah, and it feels like he's tired of going to the free agent well, perhaps much like Jim Irsay maybe as well. So that's Anthony Richardson to Carolina at number 9. So that's 4 quarterbacks in the top 10, which is crazy. Pick 10, I have Debo's Eagles taking Paris Johnson. Lane Johnson struggled with injuries. He may play 5 more years. He may play 2 more years. Either way, you have Paris Johnson, who can also play inside if you need him in the short term. Traps, you're on the clock with the Titans at 11. Rick likes Trenton Simpson better than I do. I need you to explain to me why you're taking Trenton Simpson this high.
Well, when we were doing this mock in our Slack room, we said, I think what Josh mentioned, like at pick 7, it's kind of like the talent falls off, but the Falcons need everything. Or I think you said that, Ryan. I felt the same way at pick 11, that there wasn't like a prospect who was really standing out to me as like, oh, he's definitely the best player on the board. But the Titans need everything. They could go wide receiver again, but are they going to do that after picking Treylon Burks, kind of in an offense that's decently conservative? They could certainly, round 2, round 3, go into that well. I just think the linebacker position for them is pretty barren, that they lost Jalen Smith last year, who was so good in coverage. And with Trenton Simpson, I think he just kind of fits the profile of a top half of the first round type linebacker, that he's long. He's played outside linebacker, rushing the passer. He's good in coverage. He's got the range. I think he's going to test well at the combine. So he just feels like adding another high caliber talent to this defense that without Harold Landry this season was really just Jeffrey Simmons and not much else.
No, I get it. All right, pick 12. Josh, you're the Texans. They took Bryce Young in the first round with a good GM. That was me. You're the other GM at 12. Why are you taking Brian Brzee over, say, an offensive lineman, or there is yet to be a wide receiver off the board?
Well, you can't be that good of a GM if they let me make the second pick. So, Brzee,
Well, the first pick wasn't that good either, so let's not kid ourselves.
It's all relative.
So the quickest path to the quarterback is over the center position. And like Rick alluded to, it's difficult to find quality interior defensive linemen. I have issues with Brzee. We talked about this ad nauseum off stream. You'd like to see a little bit more urgency up the middle, but this is a guy that was the number one recruit coming out of high school. He's got a lot of natural ability, and you're just taking a chance on a quality interior defensive lineman that's going to be able to impact your pass rush moving forward.
So,
and can I just ask, who in the hell is Bryce Young going to throw to?
He's going to.
The receiver
Brandon
class
Cooks?
isn't great though at the top. Yeah.
No, that's it.
Nico Collins.
That's
about it.
I've typically had the Texans at 12 targeting offensive linemen or wide receivers at that point, assuming that Bryce Young goes number 2. But Josh got a little crazy here. He, in case you're wondering, Rick, I called him to my office and I have since fired him. But that's a conversation for another time as my co-GM. I don't know if
I know I'm going to be able to find a wide receiver on day 2. Okay, I'm not concerned about it.
Okay, all right. So, Rick, perhaps you're happy that the Texans took Brian Brzee there because you're on the clock at number 13 there. They didn't take an offensive tackle. I'll ask you this, and you can tell Broderick Jones is the offensive tackle out of Georgia. I know you like him a lot athletically, but you wouldn't put him out there right away. But are you moving on from your quarterback? Are you trying to trade him? What's the situation there with your former number 2 overall pick and Zach Wilson as you beef up the offensive line?
They're definitely going to go out and get a veteran quarterback to come in. Just because of the struggles they've had at that position. And Mike White is definitely, in my opinion, not the answer. But Zach Wilson still, you always try to hold judgment till after year 3 on these guys. Cause I don't want to say they were as bad, but the Tua and the Hurst of the world, they really hit their stride. That's when Josh Allen hit his stride in year 3. So these guys, hopefully, they sound like they still have a lot of confidence in them, but then when you read the ownership come out and say, well, do whatever it takes to go get the best quarterback we can get, then, okay, is that the Derek Carrs of the world that they're going to go after, or Garoppolo, or whoever that person is? So, but they do need help up front. Becton, I think he's played only played 15 games since he's been drafted back in 2020. He's been always overweight. Supposedly he's lost a lot of weight. He's going into what you want to call his contract year. But how can you rely on him because he's been hurt so much, and especially at his size and the knee issues that he has? So this kid, I think, has a lot of upside. He has to get a little stronger, but his feet, his movement skills, it's everything that you're looking for in a left tackle. He may not be instant day 1 starter, but I think this guy has a tremendous upside that will eventually evolve into a pretty good player.
Right. And he hasn't played a ton of football. So Broderick Jones made it official. He has to clear for the draft. And let's take a quick break, and I'll come back and make pick 14 and tell you someone else who officially declared for the draft right after this. All right, pick 14, the Patriots. And I thought it was odd they released a statement saying that they were looking for an offensive coordinator. I don't think that's great if you're Matt Patricia, but I don't think it's necessarily a huge surprise to anyone. So, Traps, let me get your reaction to this. I haven't taken Quentin Johnston because they had a ton of needs. They have offensive line needs, they have play calling needs, but I think among those needs was getting my guy McCorkle Jones an option. So I have Quentin Johnston there. How do you feel about that?
I think it would make sense in that I think learning from Devontae Parker, similar X receiver on the outside who wins in those rebounding situations down the field, even though he's not crazy fast, would make a lot of sense from him. And just being around Buffalo, seeing the Bills play the Patriots twice, the defense was certainly there for this Patriots team. And I don't really think we saw Jones take the step forward that a lot of people were expecting in year 2. And to me, a lot of contributing factor to that was just the wide receiver group was not that dynamic. Whether it was Nelson Aguilar being inconsistent, Kendrick Bourne, being good at times, but not great. I don't know if Bill Belichick would make this pick. He seems to have a bad track record with first round wide receivers, but certainly from a, what this team needs perspective, Quentin Johnston being the first receiver off the board, vertical threat for this offense makes sense.
He had to take it because I took his left tackle the previous pick before. That's why I took the damn
Good
left
call.
tackle. So
I called you and you didn't answer the phone, which is very telling, Rick. I'm trying to make a move up. Pick 15, Traps with the Packers. I stole their wide receiver in Quentin Johnson. They chose not to go with Jordan Addison. They took Brian Branch, and I'm playing the role for you because I want to get Rick. I want to get your thoughts on Brian Branch because you were around him a lot at Alabama, and I think you like him. Would you take him this high?
it's a little rich for me, but I may have leaned a little bit more towards another position that I won't reveal because I don't want you to know who my next pick's going to be coming up. But he's a good football player. They played him in that star position, which is kind of like a Nick position. I think his best position is going to be free safety. He has range. He'll come up and hit. He's an effective blitzer when they do send him to affect the quarterback. The biggest negative I had on him was maybe the making plays on balls in the air. He didn't have a lot, but I give him credit, just like all those Alabama kids that opted in to play in that Sugar Bowl when they didn't have to. So kudos to those guys that do play and don't opt out of bowl games, which we'll get into later. But he has all the ability to be a very good free safety in this league.
Yeah, I like him. He's one of my favorite players. And I think it probably says a lot, Rick, based on your experience, that when Nick Saban trusts you to be out there 65, 70 snaps a game, you're doing something right.
Especially at that position. That is a hard position to play in that defense, and he excelled at that position.
Yeah, I actually like this pick. I don't mind him going this high. I may have, just for fun, taken a wide receiver because the Packers refused to do that. At 16, Josh, you're back on the clock. You're the Commanders. They've said, or at least our buddy Jonathan Jones has reported, that Sam Howell's their guy going forward. That's going to be interesting to see unfold. You haven't taken Joey Porter Jr. Explain why Joey Porter Jr. over Keely Ringo.
Well, to take it a step farther, now that I've kind of gone through the cornerbacks a little bit more, I probably would have taken Cam Smith here because he's a little bit more of a zone cornerback to put out there in Washington. He's made a fantastic jump. But to defend my pick, Joey Porter has a lot of length. They desperately need help at the cornerback position. That defense has looked a little bit better this year than they did a year ago, but not quite as good as they were 2 years ago. So to add more talent on that back end, I think you're just kind of fortifying what has become a strength for them until you do get that quarterback into place.
I like it.
Yeah, and I think Rick and I have talked about some previous podcasts where Keely Ringo felt like he looks the part, but hadn't quite lived up to the expectations. And I know Rick likes Joey Porter Jr. I like him as well. But Rick, it means, and you're the Steelers GM Omar Khan now with pick 17, that they can't have the reunion of former player and their offspring, or Cam Hayward and his brother, or T.J. Watt and his brother. So Joey Porter doesn't get to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did you give any thought here? And you took Keely Ringo, pulling the old Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and getting Kenny Pickett, his former teammate Jordan Addison.
No, not this early.
All right, well, look,
very straightforward.
That horrible theory. I don't know where that came from. I mean, they do have some pretty good receivers on that side of the ball.
Well,
so they do need help on the defensive side. They need help at corner.
Right.
If they didn't take, if the Commanders didn't take Joey Porter Jr., I would have took him in a heartbeat. I really liked him. I thought he was one of the top corners in this draft. Ringo, why I went with him was Mike Tomlin and the success they had, because there was a lot of questions on the not Pickett to Pickens. That's what I said for like last 17 weeks on the air. But they had a lot of positive results on a guy that was maybe a little bit of an underachiever, didn't play much because he was the ACL, I believe, or he was hurt. He comes in and just lights it up as a rookie at receiver. Mike Tomlin has a history of guys with this much talent that I don't want to call them underachievers, but maybe did not play as well, has a tendency to bring the best out of players. And I think if he got a hold of a Ringo here, that he is going to be an excellent corner in that defense, especially if Mike Tomlin gets his hands on him.
Yeah, they took Artie Burns in 2016 at cornerback. That didn't work. They wanted William Jackson, who went the pick before to Cincinnati. And I think that the time before that, remember Chad Scott out of Maryland, Rick, back in the day? That's the last.
Yeah, but he was a kind of corner / safety.
He was big. That's right. So they haven't had a lot of success. They haven't done it often, but they haven't had a ton of success with taking cornerbacks in the first round. So this would be off script for them.
A true success story.
Yeah.
Make him a player.
With that possibility for sure. So pick 18, I'm the Lions, and I took Miles Murphy as the Lions GM back at number 6. And number 18, I'm taking Christian Gonzalez. And Traps, you felt like this was about the right spot that Gonzalez should go off the board, the Colorado transfer, who I actually have comped to Kyer Elam. I don't know how Rick feels about that, but in terms of...
he's a better tackler than Elam when he came out.
Yeah, I would like him to be more physical.
Well, we'll go back and watch tape.
What do you think, Travis?
As this is what we call a disagreement, a group study. We'll have to sit here and do a group study on him to show you that he actually does hit people.
Yeah, I think this is just right, especially because of what's happened in this mock draft at the cornerback spot. To be the third corner off the board at 18 to a team that certainly feels like they want to go out and add some more probably young talent at the cornerback position. He's over 6 foot. He's around 200 pounds. I think he's good in man, in zone, like Rick said. Pretty sure tackler on the outside for, a defense in Detroit that is ascending, but still needs a lot of infusion of talent. Given how the cornerback board fell, I think this is just right in terms of where he should go in the first round pick-wise and to the team that he should land with.
And the one realistic thing about this mock is the run. So as you've seen, once Joey Porter went, then all of a sudden there's usually a run on a position. And we didn't collaborate on this really, but we just fell off each other's picks. But now you see that run on corners, which I think will be around this time when the real draft comes around.
Well, now that you said that, Rick, let me ask a follow-up. Is there not a chance, has there been a history, have you seen it happen where teams start overdrafting players because they're concerned?
No, if teams that stay disciplined to their board, still going to follow their board and how they have these players developed on their board. But it's like when you develop your board and you have 2 needs and you see that, okay, maybe the corners aren't going to be there and maybe there's some more linebackers are going to be there if you need a linebacker. Well, you better take the corner here, but you don't want to reach, especially if you have another position higher. You want to always take the best football player. But in this situation here, I think we all felt that these teams needed corners, and that's usually where a run starts. And all of the corners we've talked about so far, I believe, except the one which I was very pleased fell to me in a couple of picks from now, are all worthy of where they're getting taken right at this point.
Yeah, and they're all similar sized guys as well, which is seems to be an ebb and flow sometimes. Sometimes the guys are a little smaller, sometimes they're bigger. These guys are certainly bigger. 19, the Buccaneers. Mr. Trapasso, you are taking Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'll start with this. I don't know what the Buccaneers are going to do at the quarterback spot. Are they really that trustworthy if Tom Brady's not in the picture next season in Kyle Trask? I don't know what else they would do. Maybe, go back on the veteran market at the quarterback spot. But either way, it feels like Michael Mayer to me feels in a similar range and a similar, not style player, but in terms of his safeness to Kyle Eifert or to Tyler Eifert when he went in around this range to the Cincinnati Bengals. That he's just a high floor player, great receiver, can get open, very explosive in his routes, doesn't drop a lot of footballs, decent 3-down player. And the Buccaneers, I think, if they don't have Tom Brady, they just need to keep adding talent to the offensive skill positions. And Michael Mayer, to me, is the best tight end in the draft.
Rick, I'm trying to look this up quickly. Obviously, Kyle Rudolph, you've taken tight ends in the first round. Would you feel comfortable taking Mayer this high?
Oh, boy. I think there's some very good tight ends in this draft. I think he's a very good football player. I don't know how high his ceiling is. I may have a little disagreement on that.
He's not a crazy athlete. That's true.
So that's where I have a limit on his ceiling. I think he's going to be a solid starter. I don't think he's got Pro Bowl caliber. And maybe I'm a little biased because he was eating a hot dog on a sideline during a bowl game. As he opted out. All his brothers were out there fighting to win that game, that bowl game. But that's beside the point. I won't let my prejudices get in the way of liking the player.
Kyle Rudolph went in the second round. Sorry, he was 43rd overall pick. And then Irv Smith Jr., of course, you took in the second round, 50th overall pick. Okay, yeah, I think Michael Mayer is going to be. I think he has a real opportunity to go in round one, but he's not as athletic, I don't think, as some of the tight ends we've seen in recent years. But he does a lot of things really well, and it is hard to get a feel for what the Buccaneers want to do at pick 20. So this is interesting, Josh. You're making the second pick of the Seahawks in round one. You made the second picks of the Texans in round one. I almost felt like if you'd swapped these picks, I'd have been much more happy with you, and I wouldn't have fired you. But with pick 20, the Seahawks, after they've already taken Tyree Wilson at pick 5, you have them taking Jordan Addison. So why are you taking a wide receiver who I like a lot over more defensive help for a team that struggled defensively?
Yeah, so another sign that this is not a realistic scenario is the fact that the Seahawks are picking here, because traditionally they would trade out of this pick, which as the board fell, I would like to do that, in all honesty. I don't think it fell in their favor. So I stuck and I picked because that's what the scenario called for. But Jordan Addison's a fantastic player. He's going to be a third wide receiver for this team until Tyler Lockett moves on. And when he does, he'll be a fantastic complement to DK Metcalf. But in this current scenario, I think that Seattle would probably like to trade down.
Rick, let me ask you something. Would you pay Geno Smith $35 million a year?
Jeez. Are we doing a mock draft? Or are we getting into free agency? Is this a free agency mock draft, or is this a draft mock
Well,
draft?
if you need a quarterback, you got to make some decisions with these draft picks.
I don't know who's the answer right now, since I screwed it up by taking Richardson. If Richardson had fallen down there, I would have maybe considered him. But they don't have a choice right now, unless they draft a quarterback on Friday. But right now, I love Jordan Addison as a football player. I watched him at Pitt, a lot of tape on him at Pitt. He reminded me, I said before, of Devontae Smith when he came out. Skinny, linear guy that has very good speed and has big-time playmaking ability. I think he'll have that. I think it'll help Geno because I don't know what other direction that Seattle has right now at the quarterback position.
Yeah,
not Geno, then who? I mean, you got to have someone.
Right. No, I think that's right.
Is there someone out there better than Geno? Do you want to go another vet route? And Pete Carroll, the way he talks about Geno, I thought it was Joe Namath because he loves
Geno
Smith. So I'm planning on Geno being there and paying him whatever it is to keep him there. And then, I'm okay with adding another offensive weapon around him.
Okay. All right. Yep. And I think Geno and Daniel Jones are going to have a similar conversation salary-wise, and both, I think, should get paid because they both have certainly had great seasons. All right.
I know, but why would you pay Geno Smith more than Daniel Jones? Wouldn't you give did you watch the game last night? Well, I know it was the Vikings defense, but I won't get into that.
Yeah, no, I'm saying
Geno Smith's 22 years older than Daniel Jones.
No,
Daniel
that's right.
Jones has tremendous upside, and I think Daniel Jones is only going to get better, especially when Dayball did with him this year.
I'm in 100% agreement with you. I think so. I think Daniel Jones. But if they both got 35, you think Daniel Jones is going to get closer to 40?
I don't know. I don't know where they're probably saying, geez, if I would have known this, I wish I would have signed that 5th-year option.
Right. That's the conversation they're having. But I think I think the Brian Daboll component can't be overlooked, and it just goes back to the whole conversation. But if you hit on the coach, it can solve a lot of other problems that maybe you thought were issues that turned out not to be. All right. Speaking of coaches, Doug Peterson. He's your coach at 21 there. You're the Jaguars, Rick. What are you doing to help out Dougie P?
Oh, you got to have to go corner there. Cam Smith's too good of a football player to be sitting here this low. And I would bet the only thing I've agreed on this damn mock so far is that Cam Smith may go up a little higher, depending on how these corners shake out once we get through combine and the workouts and everything. But this is a very good football player that I can be, to me, a shutdown corner in the league. And he really had a really nice year this year. It's fun to watch on tape. He's one of those guys that I enjoyed watching and I wanted to watch more just because it was fun to watch the way he played the game. And I think this guy, the value I got at 20 to get this guy, I think is one of the better values out of this mock draft. And I think, him, they do need some help on the defensive side, especially out at corner, to go with the Georgia kid that they took in the second round a couple years ago. But this was too good a player to pass up.
Yeah, I think we all like Cam Smith there. And, I think we're okay with that pick. Pick 22, the Giants.
Hey, thanks for the approval.
You got it. The T-shirts in the mail. Pick 22, the Giants. I'm taking Osiris Torrance. We haven't talked a lot about interior offensive linemen in general, but Rick and I have talked about it on the podcast previously. We both like him a lot. He feels like a solid plug-and-play guy, transfer who didn't look out of sorts in year one in the SEC and helps that offensive line, helps Daniel Jones, helps Saquon Barkley. 23, the Ravens. Trapasso takes – and Rick, I'll circle back to you because I know you like this guy. He's 6 feet 180. Any concerns about Devon Witherspoon size-wise? Because I think we all can agree that he balls out.
Who are you talking to me?
Yeah, what's your thoughts?
I'm not making this pick.
I know. I want your thoughts on Traps' pick there. Like, you okay with that?
I love him as a football player, and he plays a lot bigger than his size. And, you pick out one play, Ryan, that you keep raving about because he blew up a bubble screen, and it shows up on Twitter. And there's other plays that this guy makes, not just that one play. He's not a one-hit wonder. But this guy is physical. He has ball skills. I thought, besides Joey Porter, he was the best corner in the Big Ten this year. Now,
size aside, would you still take him in round one, do you think?
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay.
No, I have no hesitation with taking this player, especially where we're at in the draft right now. Very good football player.
So Traps, Nolan Smith still on the board. They need some help at edge rush. They will get Ajabo back when he's completely healthy. Any concern? Any thoughts about taking some position other than cornerback here?
I was really leaning corner. I mean, outside of Marlon Humphrey, I think they've invested in corner, but later in the draft of late. And I think just with Witherspoon's ability to play the football in the air, 3 interceptions, 14 pass breakups this season, kind of reminds me of Greg Newsome, who went in the first round 2 years ago to the Browns. That certainly Illinois had a great season, but kind of a lower program in the Big Ten with this standout athlete who plays the run well, can cover man-to-man. I think he kind of just fits the kind of style, that ultra physical man-to-man style that the Ravens like.
All right, 24 Chargers. Josh, you are on the clock. They have Darnell Parham, and you decided to take Darnell Washington, his twin brother. I like Washington a lot. I think he's an interesting player. I don't think he's reached his potential yet as a pass receiver, but obviously can help in the blocking game. Tell me what you're thinking here.
No, that's exactly right. You're upgrading the run blocking. You're getting a huge target that's going to be used in the red zone down the field, chain moving situations. I think you're just adding more weapons to that offense. We don't know if Keenan Allen is going to return. So if you get another big guy in there that's going to be able to make some plays underneath, it's going to take some pressure off of Mike Williams. I would love to add some speed to this team, but it wasn't the right position to do so. So I went with Washington to bulk up the pass catcher.
Yeah, look, and you filled the right tackle need as well. So
that's right. That is exactly right, Rick. Thank you.
Rick, seriously, though, is there any thought of that? If there's not an offensive tackle where you're picking and you have a fantastic blocking tight end, is that even in the equation, or is that too far a crazy theory?
No, I don't know if anyone will look at him because he is talented enough to play tight end, although I don't see him as a very fleet of foot, deep down the stretch the field type tight end. I think
long strider.
Yeah, I think he's like, as I heard one person describe before, he's like thrown into a mattress. He's so big and just it's pretty easy to hit a mattress with a football. So I do give him that. I just don't think he is like the twitchy mismatch type tight end, except for his size. One thing that maybe there are a couple times, and I'm just being critical here a little bit, is there were some chances where he had that he did drop the ball. Now, he made some good catches, but I think he just would like to see him even be more consistent catching the ball. And I just don't think – I don't want to call him a plotter or a plow horse, but he's not as fleet of foot as some of these other tight ends that you're going to probably be able to land on Friday. But I'll give him credit. You got your right tackle there as well. So he fills two needs in one pick. It's a hell of a pick.
I was just looking for chip help there, so that's all it was.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. I hesitate to bring up comps, but I'll do it anyway at the risk of a scathing rebuke. Mercedes Lewis went in the first round, but as Prisco told me, he goes, yeah, but he was more of a receiving tight end when he came out. He wasn't a blocker, but he became a great blocker. Do you see any Mercedes Lewis?
I can see, because you can't find really blocking tight ends. You can like the tight end from Notre Dame. Mayer is the kind of the jack of all trades. I don't think he has a unique trade as I don't call him master of none, because he's a very good football player. This guy is unique because of his size and his blocking ability, and that is definitely hard to find at that position. But you better want to run the ball if you're going to draft a guy like this.
And they couldn't run the ball over the weekend, and in some part, not large.
They didn't try sometimes. They should have kept running the ball, but that's another podcast we can talk about.
Yeah, I don't even want to go down that road. I feel terrible. All right, 25. Rick, you are Jerry Jones. You're taking Drew Sanders
finally.
Out of Arkansas, incidentally, home of Jerry Jones, where he played football back in the day. So 5-star transfer from Alabama. Played mostly outside of Alabama. Wasn't going to get as much playing time, perhaps. So he moves to Arkansas, moves inside. Is that versatility a good thing, a bad thing?
Oh, it's phenomenal. Imagine what Dan Quinn would do with an athlete like this kid, because he can rush the passer, he can play the run, he can drop in coverage. He's 6'5". I think he's going to be around 240. I think he's just too unique of an athlete, and I'd put him in there, one, because I think Van Der Esch is probably done. I mean, he's been hurt and banged up a lot. But if you have a guy with this size and the athletic traits and the way he runs and the way Dan Quinn, assuming that he doesn't get a head coaching job, would utilize him on that defensive side of the ball, imagine him and Micah Parsons and all the different pieces that they do. This kid could do a lot of things for a defense end. He's a very, very good football player.
Josh, Rick, do you have any comparisons between Drew Sanders and an Anthony Barr, who I know was in Dallas this year?
Yeah, no, that came up a little bit.
Yeah,
and we took Anthony, and one of the reasons we took Anthony was because of the versatility, because of the ability to rush the passer. Anthony Barr was very good in coverage for us in his prime before he started to wear down with his knee injuries and stuff. But the other thing that Anthony Barr did is, when you rush these guys, and he can rush off the edge, but when you rush them and you can get them mismatched on a running back, these guys with that kind of length, speed, and athleticism really create havoc on the quarterback, because most running backs at this level can't match up with a big athletic kid like this when they send him on blitzes.
Yeah. Are there any concerns with Drew Sanders in terms of asking him to do too much? And I say that.
No.
Well, what about Isaiah Simmons? Because Isaiah Simmons was asked to do too much, and
this guy, to me, is a better football player. Isaiah Simmons was a very good athlete. This guy, to me, when you just watch football player to football player, I thought he was a better football player.
Okay, great.
No.
All right. No, we got it. I'm making N-O, period. Got it. 26. Cincinnati Bengals wish they could actually pull this trade off right now and have this dude show up tomorrow. I haven't taken Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle at Oklahoma. They've had some injuries on the offensive line. What are you making those noises for, Rick?
I just
some of your throat.
Going. Yeah. I had to clear my...
Okay, I hope you're okay there. Let me know if you want me to hit the medical alert bracelet. I don't want you to have a situation on the podcast here. So, Rick, since you had to clear your throat there, would you go to a different direction, take a different player? Or are you just not a huge Anton Harrison fan as a first-round pick?
Yeah, I don't know if, with the Bengals, I know they definitely need offensive line help. I just don't know if I would go there with this. I didn't see him as a first-round pick. So
yeah, I was stretching at this point, and we sort of talked about how you run out of players.
Now we're starting to get into the reach area here a little bit, and it's like pick your flavor and who's your, who's your daddy type pick on every.
Let me ask you though,
different opinions.
If you're sitting here and you've made a million phone calls and you can't trade down, and there's no one you love, everyone has a second-round grade. What are you doing?
Well, you got to pick somebody. So you're not going to sit there and not pick somebody. But this is a scenario when you're in the draft and you're picking, let's say, this is probably going to be, we'll see where it all ends up. But when you're picking this low in the first round, you better make sure that you have 3 or 4 options at this pick. And, so you're going to go into your group studies. We always did it where we had all the scouts, all the coaches in. I called it clusters. I put 4 or 5 guys in a cluster. We'd watch them together. Then we would kind of rank them at this part of the draft. And if we got into this situation, and I always put us in a situation where you can't move. This is, I won't say the worst case, but we have to pick someone. There's no other way to go. So who are we going to go? And this is where we'd really hone in on our studies as a group to try to come up what was going to be the best pick for us. So I would have probably thrown him in with a couple other guys just to make sure that I understand we need an offensive tackle, a right tackle. Now, Lyle Collins, I know he got hurt, but they spent a lot of money on that offensive line last year to help get that fixed. And then the left tackle didn't look very good, Jonas Williams, last night either. So I can understand why you would probably take this, but I start to think that we're kind of getting into the reach area.
Yeah.
Not with the, we got a couple reaches coming down the board here pretty quick that, but this is where you want to really hone in and make sure, that you're taking the best player on the board that can also potentially fill a need.
All right. Pick 27, Minnesota Vikings, Chris Trapasso. You're taking one of Rick's favorite players, but tell us why you took him here. And then Rick, you can tell us if you would be willing to take him this high.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure being the Vikings GM on a podcast with a former Vikings GM for a decade.
I just said on the podcast I liked him. I really hate this player. I don't think he's going to play worth it. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I think he is the bendiest outside edge rusher in this class, and he can get low and dip around offensive tackles. I think he's got, I don't want to say elite burst, like, Bosa-esque burst, but it's pretty good, especially picking him at 27 with him available this late. The pass rush counter moves, I think, are certainly there. And given Donnell Hunter, Zadarius Smith being up there in age a little bit, to have a late first-round pick that doesn't have to come in and be that alpha rusher right away and can learn from those veterans, I was really ecstatic that I wasn't going to get bashed by Rick with this selection, because it kind of seems to make sense for the long-term future for the Vikings.
We'll see. Rick, what
do you say? Yeah, just let us know. Apparently you listen to the podcast, whether you like us, whether you hate us, just let us know. Just let someone know. As Ryan's go-to line here on this.
My bit.
I do like this kid a lot. I thought he played hard. I went down and watched him. I wanted to see him against Steen, the Alabama left tackle. Where he's not as effective is when they reduce him inside, what you call a 5 technique. But when they put him out in a wide 9 or outside the tackle and let him utilize his speed and his athletic skill set, and the kid plays hard. He was fun to watch because his motor is nonstop. So I'm not going to bash this pick because I do like this player.
You take him in round 1 if you were sort of at the end of round 1 and you were stuck, or maybe even if you weren't stuck, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, I'd take him over Kobe Turner in a heartbeat.
Oh boy, we'll get to that one in a second. Put on your seatbelt, Craps. All right, 28, the Denver Broncos. Josh, you're taking Antonio Johnson, the safety. I actually like the way he plays. Explain to me why you're going. Linebackers need 2. Explain to me why you're going with safety, and perhaps if you had any other positions that you were contemplating here, including quarterback.
Yeah, there's a few directions we would have liked to have gone. I think just the way that the board fell, you're looking at a player that you can put back there with Justin Simmons and round out that secondary. He's a bigger safety, so you can play him in sub packages. He plays sideline to sideline. He's not going to get stuck in traffic. He's a good communicator, good leadership, all that kind of stuff. I loved what I saw from him coming into the year. I need to get back on him and see, a little bit more of how he played this year, because people have soured on him a little bit. But this is a guy that has great size, good speed. He's going to play sideline to sideline. He's physical. I like what he can bring to the secondary.
I'm glad that you guys are getting to experience what I have to experience weekly with Rick sitting back, giggling, just waiting to say, well, go ahead, Rick. What do you got?
No, I'm a good football player. Let's move on.
All right.
My God, there's 100 other guys, but that's fine.
Love it. Love it. Finally, share that you guys can share. Misery loves company. This is the
one of my former scouts from the Minnesota Vikings, or my guys that work with me, listened to this podcast, and they said, God, this is just like sitting in our draft meetings. I can't believe it.
I know. We should start a support group. We can all get together and talk
I'm a self-esteem builder. That's what I do.
That's
and then fix all these picks later.
All right, Mr. Spielman, you were on the clock with the Bills at 29. And look, you're getting on us a little bit about outside the box picks. This is an outside the box pick. You take Zay Flowers. He's undersized. I'll check quickly, but you don't have a history of taking undersized wide receivers in round one just off the top of my head. Explain to me Zay Flowers and what he does for you in Buffalo.
Well, I just thought, and it was based a lot off of what they needed. And, the one thing that they're missing in that offense is a slot receiver. And I went back and forth between Zay Flowers and Downs from North Carolina. I think they both can come in. I know they have Hines as a returner. I don't know. I can't remember if he was under contract next year or not that they traded for. But this kid reminded me of a poor man's Dotson. We talked about it earlier, Ryan. I don't think he's as good as Dotson when he came out of Penn State last year. But this kid is a very good football player, and for a not very talented football team, and they did not have a very talented quarterback, this kid took advantage of every opportunity that he had. And he, to me, almost carried that offense just by getting the ball in his hands. So I'm not always big on undersized guys, but this guy fit a need I think Buffalo has, and he's a very good football player.
Traps, you were the resident Bills fan, and you actually like Zay Flowers from what I recall. How do you feel about this?
I really like it. I like him more than Josh Downs. I think he's more dynamic. He has better suddenness. I think he can get down the field a little bit better than Josh Downs. I think Downs will be a good player, probably picked on Friday, that will really be that just underneath slot option. I think with Zay Flowers, you have a little bit more vertical ability, and Rick's right. And I think we can all just watching the Bills can see it, that they really need that really reliable secondary option at receiver after Stephon Diggs.
Plus, he likes playing in the snow. That's not going to be an adjustment for him.
There you go. Good call.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if you told me this, Rick, or I heard it from someone else, but he's supposed to be a good young man. I want to say good kid because I'm old, but I heard he's off the field. He's a great kid, great person. So that's good too. Pick 30. The Chiefs are on the clock. Josh, tell me what you think about this. And this is the okay, this guy's here pick of all. Okay, this guy here is here picks. I'm taking as the Chiefs Bijan Robinson because why not? What do you think about that?
Well, I love it if he's going to make it this far. I mean, you talk about putting that kind of a talent in Andy Reid's scheme. I mean, that's almost unfair. The thing with running back in this particular class, I think everybody would agree he's probably going to go in the top 20 somewhere, even, with the positional value. It's just kind of difficult to peg which one of these teams is actually going to take a chance on him there. And if you put him in any mock draft to any fan base across the league, they are going to be incredibly upset with you giving them a running back in the first round. But that's the type of talent that he is. I mean, he's the best running back prospect we've seen since Saquon Barkley. So you put that in Kansas City's offense, that's going to open up a lot of things. He's a great pass catcher. He's a good run blocker. He's got it all. I mean, I don't have any real weaknesses for him. So it's almost unfair to see him fall to Kansas City.
So, Rick, what do you think about this? Because a couple of years ago, they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He obviously didn't work out in the first round. They circle back and they're like, all right, Bijan's here. Like, would you be okay with the Chiefs if they could not move out of this pick and Bijan's sitting there? You're like, okay, well, I guess I have to take him.
Yeah, the one thing, when you watch Baltimore's draft, when you watch Kansas City's draft, I think those guys do a great job just getting value because they're always picking in the lower part of the draft.
Right.
And to me, I bet you if you look across the league and everybody's board, this kid's going to be sticking out like a sore thumb because he's that talented of a player.
Right.
And it's almost too good to pass up when you get the only running back that I can, we ended up getting Dalvin Cook in the second round. But we went through the same scenario when Adrian Peterson was sitting there, and we had Chester Taylor, who just came off a 1,000-yard season. He was just too good of a player to pass up, and you can't pass up guys that have this much talent.
And you can hear about Adrian Peterson and Rick's picks from a previous episode. So you can find that on the old YouTubes or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. This is pick 30.
Sit up for this one because
yeah.
Okay.
You want to stretch out, Rick, because this is going to be this could be a thing here. So Traps, you have the final pick in the first round, pick number 31. The Eagles You're taking Kobe Turner, the interior defensive lineman out of Wake Forest. Explain yourself, and please, for the love of God, do it with a ton of confidence. Because
yes, well, I mean, I deserve
coming.
this. I deserve this because Josh took a beating earlier. I kind of was able to sneak through without any.
Wait, was it at midnight? You just had to throw a name in there, and that's the name that we had. Like, oh god, that's the last guy I watched. Well, let's throw his name in there.
I think no, that's not what happened. Actually, I think every year in the draft we see later, like Rick was saying earlier, picks 26, 27, 28 into that range toward the end of the first round. There are some reaches. There are some surprising names. Peyton Turner. Last year, I think this could be that type of pick because the Eagles and Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, Fletcher Cox, they're pretty old up front on the interior. Kobe Turner is not the athlete of Milton Williams caliber, who they picked a couple years ago out of Louisiana Tech, but I think he's that type, 6'3", 290, pretty advanced pass rusher, maybe not high upside, but I think Howie Roseman usually leans either offensive line or defensive line in the first round. And they don't need him to be a great player immediately with Javon Hargrave there. But I think over the long term, this is a kind of a Howie Roseman pick, given how old they are at that other defensive tackle spot.
Okay, I will put $100 on that this is not a Howie Roseman pick. And
why is that?
Because I don't think I think he's undersized. I think he plays hard. I think he's a little bit stiffer as an athlete, as we used to say in some of the draft meetings. You can throw him a can of oil and make him the Tin Man, on the next podcast, or put a couple bolts in his neck and he'd make $1 million playing Frankenstein out there. So
some dated references, Rick.
Okay.
Those are just some of the things that actually came out of draft meetings.
So let me ask you this, Rick. So you're sitting there 31, and again, we're assuming you can't do anything. They took Paris Johnson with the 10th pick. What are you thinking about here in terms of, like, give me a name of someone that you might have on your list of break in case of emergency?
I've got a list of about 250 names that I had highlighted ahead of him. So
what positions?
It was like, okay, my homework assignment, I just need to get a name in real quick. We're running out of time on the clock. Now, I do commend the courage to come up and take someone like that. And maybe you're going to be right. We're all going to be wrong. So very admirable to stick to your guns on a guy that's probably going to get picked on Saturday. But if you have him going in the first round, and I will talk to Howie directly on this one, just to tell you that no, we're not going to take him in the first.
Okay.
So you got a name for us? Like who would you think about here?
Oh my God.
Let's go with defensive lineman. Like who would you like? You wouldn't take. You don't like Ika this high, right? You said he's too.
And he's a nose tackle.
Yeah, those are two down guys. I don't take two down guys in the first round.
All right.
Because I don't think they have pass rush. But boy, just who I like better, and I still think it's too high to take him. But just looking at some of the names I had here that I've done, I would take Brian Young from Alabama over him.
That's your rat hole guy. Is that what you call it?
That's my rat hole player, because I think
a good player.
He's undervalued as an inside nickel pass rusher, and he's a very good football player that a lot of people don't really know about yet. I would probably look at Carter from Army, who I think has a lot of upside and a tremendous athlete coming out. There's going to be a ton of guys that are going to come out, but why wouldn't you take a Carter, a swing at a Carter? They could always use another pass rusher, because I don't know if whatchamacallit is out of contract or not, who they traded for from the Bears, Quinn.
Yeah, Robert Quinn.
Yeah, but that guy is just too athletic and too much size and athleticism and such a high ceiling to not even take a swing at a guy like that before you go with a 5'9", 260-pound nose tackle that played against Ryan. Did you even play college football, Ryan?
Yeah, we played at the Thanksgiving pickup bowl. So yeah.
Now I would have taken him the first round if you were in that Thanksgiving pickup bowl.
There you go. So yeah, congratulations to Josh and Traps. You survived the first annual mock draft Rick Spielman beatdown. I'm glad to know, Rick, that your former employees are reaching out to you to let you know that you are as as soft as ever in terms of
self-esteem builder. That's what my job was.
So I look, and also just quickly, I talked to Prisco last week or something, and he said, I can't wait to get on the podcast and yell at both you guys. So that's something to look forward to in the new year.
Oh my God, is he a bad evaluator? Just sitting with him for 17 weeks.
But yeah, so that's mock draft version 1.0 in the books. Again, you can leave us a comment on Spotify or not on Spotify, excuse me, on iTunes if you want to suggestions, if you want suggestions for Rick picks, if you want to leave a mailbag question for draft related stuff, we'll get to that. So that's a wrap on episode 7. Subscribe to the podcast, leave a 5-star review. And if you enjoyed it, as you know, Rick, tell a friend. If you hated it, tell an enemy, just tell somebody. All right, we'll be back next week. Thank you guys.